So I'm laying in bed the other day, couldn't sleep, had to get up early in the morning, and then all of a sudden I start thinking about all these great running backs that nobody talks about anymore. How LeSean McCoy used to break people's ankles and have them on skates.
To Shady, and he pounds it in, and the Eagles are within 6.
How Le'Veon Bell used to methodically pick apart defenses by hitting the hole at the perfect time.
Roethlisberger hands it to Bell, sticks the helmet down, and slithers in for the touchdown.
First and goal to go for the Steelers, and Bell is in.
How Todd Gurley would weave his way to the end zone, but his damn knees just couldn't stay healthy enough. These are running back primes that everybody took for granted. Now, if you guys have ever played football or any sport for that matter, you know that by the time the game is over, it's almost a guarantee that you are not going to be smelling your best. Well, today's sponsor has got you covered in keeping you as fresh as possible. It is Mando. Mando is a full body deodorant that you can apply absolutely everywhere that might stink, and I mean everywhere. Personally, I haven't been playing too many sports lately, but I do like to hit up the gym, I'd say around 5 times a week, and Mando is great at masking any odors that come about while working out. They also have some awesome scents too. I only have 3 out of 5 of them right now. I don't have the bourbon leather, I don't have the unscented, but I do have the Clover Woods right here. I have the Mount Fuji, which has got to be my favorite. And then I also have the Pro Sport. Great part about this is Mando also has a bunch of aluminum-free options available, just like this one. Mando was created by a doctor who firsthand saw how BO was being mistreated and decided, you know what, I'm gonna do something about that. And they changed the game with this one. It's also clinically proven to control odor much better than just showering with soap alone. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant that does not come off on your skin, which is amazing. A cream tube deodorant or a spray deodorant that you can put on your entire body wherever smells. And 2 free products of your choice, like the mini body wash and the deodorant wipes. Luckily, I have a discount code to help you guys all get hooked on my favorite smelling whole body deodorant on the market. New customers are going to get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code FANTASYP. All you got to use is code FANTASYP at the link shown on screen right now, or you can go down to the description below or the pinned comment. You will see the link there. Thank you once again to Mando for sponsoring today's video. Up first, we have a personal favorite of mine, Arian Foster. While he had to work his way up the Texans depth chart, earning only 54 carries in his rookie year, by the time the 2010 season came around, he was more than ready to make his mark on the league. Foster's running style made him one of the most interesting players to watch in the early 2010s. His combination of strength and speed made him extremely difficult to stop, and he made even the most difficult plays appear effortless. Foster entered the 2010 season as Houston's starting running back, and it's safe to say that his prime kicked off this year as he had a statement game in the team's opening matchup against the Colts. He set the franchise record for most rushing yards in a game, finishing that matchup with 33 attempts for 231 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Foster, right side, touchdown.
Along with having the best day on the ground in franchise history, Foster also set the mark for the second most rushing yards in a Week 1 game in NFL history, finishing only behind O.J. Simpson, who picked up 250 yards in Week 1 of the 1973 season against the Patriots. He simply could not be stopped, and he carried the Texans to an easy 34-24 win to open up the year. This was far from the only time that he earned a place in the Texans' record books this season also. In Week 4 against the Raiders, just 2 quarters after being benched after losing a fumble, Foster set the record for the longest rushing touchdown in Houston's history, which was 74 yards at the time. While a couple of records is cool and all, he was not satisfied with that. Foster kept his foot on the gas throughout the remainder of the regular season, and it can be argued that he was the best running back in the entire league that year. He finished the campaign rushing for 1,616 yards and 16 touchdowns, averaging 101 yards per game. Along with this, he picked up an additional 604 yards and 2 touchdowns as a pass catcher. This broke Pheoms' previous record for the most yards from scrimmage from an undrafted player in NFL history. To make these numbers even even more impressive, he accomplished these stats while only starting in 13 of the 16 games. He went on to lead the league in rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, and rushing yards per game, which earned him a spot in the Pro Bowl, on the All-Pro First Team, and he even finished third in Offensive Player of the Year voting, behind only Tom Brady and Michael Vick. Potentially due to the insane workload that he had in the 2010 season, Foster entered 2011 with a nagging hamstring injury that bothered him up until week number 4. I'd say it appeared that Foster was more than ready to go against the Steelers though, as he made easy work of the team's elite rush defense. Foster finished that game with 155 yards on the ground, including a 42-yard touchdown run in a tough-fought 17-10 win. While these were far from his best numbers in a single game, this was the most yards a running back was able to pick up against the Steelers since 2003. Along with this, his 42-yard score in the fourth quarter was the longest rushing touchdown Pittsburgh had allowed since 2006. Foster finished the 2011 regular season with 1,224 yards and 10 touchdowns on the ground, which are extremely impressive numbers, especially considering that he was forced to miss 3 games throughout the season, mainly as a result of that nagging hamstring injury. He was named to his second consecutive Pro Bowl and made an All-Pro second team appearance. The Texans had a scary offense that year when everybody was healthy, featuring Foster and then the duo of Matt Schaub and Andre Johnson. The problem is that all 3 of them were rarely on the field at one time. Despite the 3 battling injuries throughout the season, they were still able to lead the team to a 10-6 record, making the postseason for the first time in Foster's career. The first round matchup against the Bengals, Houston looked absolutely dominant, taking the game by a final score of 31-10. Foster found the end zone twice in that game. However, in the divisional round, they met their match in the Baltimore Ravens. Despite the Ravens having an elite rush defense, Foster still had a very solid game on the ground, recording 132 yards and a touchdown.
Foster, touchdown!
Unfortunately, with Schaub sidelined with an injury and the team having to go with TJ Yates at quarterback, the offense really couldn't get much going. The Texans defense did all they could in this one, but they still fell 20-13. The 2012 season saw the first and only time in his career that Foster was able to start in 16 games in a regular season. In Week 5 against the Jets, Foster became the 3rd fastest player in NFL history to accumulate 5,000 yards from scrimmage, with only Edgerrin James and Eric Dickerson reaching that milestone faster. He had another elite season, rushing for 1,424 yards and 15 touchdowns on 351 carries, going on to lead the league in both rushing touchdowns and carries. Of course, these numbers were good enough to give him a Pro Bowl appearance, and the Texans made a return to the postseason, finishing with a very strong 12-4 record. In the first round matchup, Houston took on the Cincinnati Bengals. For the second straight season, Foster torched Cincinnati's defense and sent them packing early. He finished the contest with 140 yards and a score on the ground.
Foster gets it done. Touchdown, Houston.
However, for the second straight season, they were stopped in the divisional round by the Patriots this time around. This was another heartbreaking loss for the Texans, falling by a final score of 41-28. Foster had a strong performance though, picking up 90 yards and a touchdown on the ground, along with pulling in 7 passes for 63 yards and a touchdown.
It's 4th down and 1. Gotta go for it. All those points down. Arian Foster hit.
Great second.
5 on 4th and goal. There's Arian Foster.
Sadly, the 2013 season marked the beginning of the end for Foster's reign of terror over the league. He suffered a back injury before the year even began that kept him limited throughout the preseason. While he roughed it out through the first 8 games of that year, it quickly became too much and he had to cut his season short. He returned to playing at an elite level once he recovered from his back injury. He missed only 3 games this year and was showing flashes of being the same player that he was a few seasons prior. He finished the year with a respectable 1,246 yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground. This was enough to earn him his final Pro Bowl appearance of his career. He spent the remaining 2 seasons of his career in a constant fight with injuries, only being able to take the field 8 times over that span. The insane workload that he took on during his prime with the Texans had to be a main cause of Foster's decline. After years of being a workhorse back, he could no longer handle it anymore. This was a relatively short prime of 4 elite seasons in 5 years, but this could also be one of the main reasons why Foster is rarely talked about despite his dominance over that span. To this day, he is still the greatest running back in Texans history, holding 4 of the top 5 spots in franchise history for single season rushing yards. Up next, we have LeSean McCoy. As an Eagles fan, this one hits home for me. A reasonable Eagles fan, that is, don't get it twisted. All right, I'm not fighting people in the crowd, but Shady was an elite speed back who could turn on the afterburners and score on any given play. Pairing this with his one-of-a-kind ball carrier moves, and there were very few defenders that even had a chance of getting a hand on him in the open field. While he posted over 1,000 yards on the ground in the 2010 season, his prime really didn't kick off until 2011. Even though he couldn't be stopped, he wasn't quite getting the carries necessary to lead the league in stats such as rushing yards. There were a handful of games where he received less than 15 carries. Looking back at Arian Foster, there were games where he would get the ball over 30 times, but Shady didn't need the ball that many times to make things happen. Eagles finished the season with an 8-8 record, but coincidentally, they were 5-1 in games where Shady rushed for over 100 yards. Despite his inconsistent workload depending on the game script, McCoy still had a very strong season, rushing for 1,309 yards and 17 touchdowns, along with leading the league in rushing touchdowns. These numbers earned him a spot in the Pro Bowl and on the All-Pro First Team. In the following season, McCoy took a bit of a step back statistically. This came as a result of him missing 4 games due to a nasty concussion. However, in 2013, where he played in all 16 regular season games for the first time in his career, Shady absolutely showed out. This was an elite Philadelphia Eagles offense that year that was headlined by McCoy and star wide receiver Deshaun Jackson, 2 players who possessed otherworldly speed. After a strong performance in the opening game of the season, picking up 184 yards and a touchdown on 31 carries, he showed his versatility the following game. While Philly didn't use him much as a rusher, picking up only 53 yards on the ground, he killed San Diego as a pass catcher. The best game of McCoy's NFL career came in one of the coolest settings for a game in recent history. In Week 14, the Eagles took on the Lions in what I would call a snow bowl. Philadelphia received a massive snowfall totaling over 8.5 inches. While this could not have been too much fun to play in, or maybe it was, it made for an extremely interesting game to watch. It was extremely difficult to move the ball in these conditions.
Players had trouble holding on to the ball. Nobody could hold on to that thing.
And on paper, shifty and speedy players like Shady should have had an awful game, but after a second half explosion, McCoy set a career high 217 yards on the ground.
If you're the Eagles, you know you're giving it to LeSean McCoy. He just made people look silly in the white stuff.
He's nice.
Not only was this a career game for Shady, but it also set the franchise record for the Eagles, the previous record being held by Steve Van Buren at 205 yards. Games like this one propelled McCoy to leading the league with 1,607 yards on the ground, and along with this, he also led the league with 314 carries and 100.4 rushing yards per game. These very impressive numbers earned him another Pro Bowl and All-Pro First Team appearance. Along with this, he finished second in Offensive Player of the Year voting, losing the award to only Peyton Manning. Philadelphia made the postseason for the first time in Shady's prime that year, taking on the Saints in the wild card round. He had a solid showing, posting 77 yards and a touchdown. However, the Eagles came up just short, losing 26-24. And thanks to Chip Kelly, after this season, McCoy spent only one more year with the Eagles.
So his first meeting, though, he calls me up and said, hey, I got a team meeting next week or whatever, you know, because off season. I said, yo, I'll be there, you know, I'll be there with all that. So I call him back probably like 2 days later, like, yo, look, my best friend died. My best friend's dad died. So I'm going to the funeral and all that. So I can't make it to the first meeting. He says, cool. He calls me back. Hey, LeSean takes a deep breath. So I'm like, all right, that's some bullshit about to happen. Okay, I could just hear it. He says, I really need you there, man. One of our best players, one of our leaders, got to be there in my first meeting. So I said, well, look, man, I ain't going to be there, coach. I told you this. I'm not going to a new relationship, I'm not going to lie to you. I think that caused a rocky start, right? So that was my first rocky relationship with him. And since then, I mean, y'all know the story. It's been bad.
His final year with the team came in 2014. He was still playing at a very high level and even became the all-time rushing leader in Eagles history during that season. He finished the year with 1,319 yards, which ended up being third in the league and only 5 touchdowns on the ground. While he struggled to find the end zone, this was due to the lack of touches that he received around the goal line. He was splitting carries with Darren Sproles and Chris Polk in most goal line situations. Despite this, McCoy made a return to the Pro Bowl, and in the offseason, he was traded to the Buffalo Bills for Kiko Alonso. Trash trade. Absolutely terrible trade for for the Eagles just because Kiko was from Oregon and so was Chip Kelly. That's why I traded for him, okay? Once he got to Buffalo, Shady was well on pace to have a great debut year, but a nagging hamstring injury limited him early in the season, and his year ended 2 weeks early with an MCL injury. Despite this injury-riddled season, McCoy still made a return to the Pro Bowl, posting 895 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. He looked much more like himself in the 2016 season, being able to play in 15 of the Bills' 16 regular season games. He had arguably the best year from a Bills running back in a decade and a half, posting 1,267 rushing yards and the most from a Buffalo player at that position since 2003. Along with this, his 13 touchdowns on the ground tied for the second most in franchise history. Shady also added another Pro Bowl appearance to his resume, something that's very impressive to pull off, especially coming off leg injuries at nearly 30 years old. The final season of Shady's prime came in 2017. This season marked the final 1,000-yard rushing season of his career. Along with this, he found the end zone 6 times on the ground compared to his 7 rushing touchdowns that he scored in the following 3 seasons combined. His efforts played a huge role in the Bills making the postseason, and he was named to the Pro Bowl for the 6th and final time in his career. In the playoffs, the Bills took on the Jaguars in the wild card round. This was a defensive battle on both sides, and the Jags did an incredible job of keeping Shady in check.
2nd and 5. McCoy knocked down. That's where they're going. With McCoy.
While he failed to find the end zone, he still had a solid game with 75 yards on the ground and pulling in 6 passes for 44 yards. All that work wasn't quite enough though, with Jacksonville still coming out on top by a final score of 10-3. Shady's decline primarily came as a result of his age. Once he hit that 30 mark, he began to fall off statistically, but that's not something out of the ordinary. Players like McCoy, who rely heavily on their speed and agility, typically begin to lose their edge much sooner than 30. While he served mainly as a backup running back in his final 2 seasons, I was glad to see him come away as a 2-time Super Bowl champion as a member of the Chiefs with Andy Reid once again, and with Tom Brady and the Bucs. Up next, we have DeMarco Murray. He spent his first 2 years in the league establishing himself as the starting running back for the Cowboys after being selected in the 3rd round of the 2011 NFL Draft. While he had earned the spot roughly halfway through his rookie season, a sprained foot messed up what should have been his first full season as the team's starter. He was forced to miss 6 games, but when he was back on the field, he showed flashes of being a truly special back. Touchdown! Throughout his prime, Murray was the center of some criticism for his running style, as it was just a bit unconventional. He almost strictly ran upright, making it easier for defenders to place a hit on him. However, this is what set Murray apart from other top talents at the position. He fully embraced this additional contact that his running style drew, and at many times it seemed like he even enjoyed it. Murray was a violent runner who at times looked like he could run through a brick wall if it was in front of him. He was also the missing piece at the running back position the Cowboys desperately needed to round out that high-powered offense that also featured the quarterback wide receiver duo of Tony Romo and Dez Bryant. He got his 2013 campaign off to a hot start in week number 3 when Dallas took on the Rams. Murray posted a season-high 175 yards on the ground and also found the end zone. This was a cakewalk of a win for the Cowboys, and they made easy work of the Rams in this one, coming out on top by a final score of 31-7. Murray was well on his way to having his best season of his career. However, he was forced to miss 2 games following an MCL sprain in week number 6. Despite missing those 2 games, he still finished the regular season with 1,121 yards and 9 touchdowns on the ground. This earned him the first Pro Bowl appearance of his career. Despite the 2014 season being Murray's 4th in the league, it was the first in which he was able to start in all 16 games. He took full advantage of his health this season and took the league by storm. It can be argued that Murray was the best running back that the entire NFL had to offer that season. While the Cowboys had a fair amount of weapons on the offensive side of the ball, Murray was a huge beneficiary of Dallas's elite offensive line and completely dominated the league. After the team's Week 8 loss to Washington, Murray broke Jim Brown's record for the most consecutive 100-yard rushing games to open up a season. This is a record that had been in place since 1958. However, his strongest showing of the season did not take place during the record-breaking stretch. This came in Week 14 when Dallas took on the Chicago Bears. Murray completely dismantled the Bears defense on that day, picking up an insane 179 yards and a touchdown on the ground.
Right. You got to go for it. I mean, he had a lot of momentum going in. This offensive line was playing well.
The Cowboys came out on top by a comfortable 41-28 margin. By the time the regular season came to an end, Murray had racked up 13 touchdowns and 1,845 yards on the ground on 392 carries. He went on to lead the league in all three of these statistical categories. This earned him another trip to the Pro Bowl, but he also made an appearance on the All-Pro First Team, took down the Offensive Player of the Year award, and even finished third in MVP voting, only behind Aaron Rodgers and J.J. Watt. This incredible year on the ground from Murray played a huge role in the Cowboys making the playoffs for the first time in his career. The wild card round, they took on the Detroit Lions. Now, Murray continued his dominant style of play from the regular season and was the deciding factor in this matchup. He finished the contest with 75 yards on the ground and a touchdown.
And here comes DeMarco Murray. Exactly.
While the Lions did a better job than most teams in slowing him down, this rushing touchdown began the comeback that saw Dallas score 17 unanswered points to win the game by a final score of 24-20. In the divisional round, the Cowboys would meet their match in the Green Bay Packers, though. Murray once again showed out in this one, proving that the bright lights of the playoffs did not faze him in the slightest, as he picked up 123 yards and a touchdown on the ground.
It's Tyler Clutch time to make a block. Touchdown, DeMarco Murray.
Unfortunately, even this strong rushing performance was not enough for Dallas to come out with a win, and they fell by a final score of 26-21. Shockingly, this went on to be his final game with the Cowboys, and he went on to sign with Dallas's division rival, the Philadelphia Eagles. Without the elite offensive line of Dallas blocking for him, Murray took a huge step back in his debut season in Philly. After only accumulating 11 yards on the ground throughout his first 2 games, Murray set the record for the least amount of yards a player had ever had 2 weeks into the season after winning a rushing title the year prior. To make matters even worse, he was forced to miss the following week with a hamstring injury. This 2015 season brought the momentum that Murray had built up over the past few years to a screeching halt. In fact, he lost his starting job to Ryan Matthews and Darren Sproles and went on to only start in 8 of the 15 games that he played in this season. This was a year that Murray would have rather everybody forgot, and many believe that he would never be the running back that he was just 1 year prior. The 2016 season marked the final year of Murray's prime. In the offseason, he was traded from the Eagles after just 1 year with the team. This deal sent him to the Tennessee Titans along with a 2016 4th-round pick for a Titans 2016 4th-round pick.
Obviously, John and Coach Malarkey for giving this exciting opportunity to join a prestige organization, and it goes without saying, I know there's a lot of hard work to do, and I look forward to competing every day, alongside my teammates and bring a lot of joy and promise.
While he was far from the same back that led the league in rushing yards in 2014, Murray was playing at a much higher level in Tennessee than he was in Philadelphia. He was able to take the field and start for the Titans in all 16 regular season games. Murray put together an elite 5-game stretch from week 6 through week 10 in which he found the end zone on the ground at least once a game. He finished the year with 1,287 yards and 9 touchdowns on the ground, earning him the 3rd and final Pro Bowl appearance of his career. Shockingly, Murray's decline came faster than anyone could have expected. He lasted just 1 more season in the league before he was forced into retirement. This decline mainly came as a result of a very tough 2017 season that ended with a serious knee injury that forced him to miss the entire Titans playoff run. Murray was 29 years old in the 2017 season, and a running back successfully bouncing back from a knee injury at that age is just almost unheard of. Up next, we have Le'Veon Bell. Now, Bell was a very unique back and arguably one of the most patient runners that the league had ever seen. He had a one-of-a-kind running style that saw him put his faith into the offensive line, drawing out his time in the backfield before his line opened up a lane for him, and then he hit that hole aggressively. Bell was an extremely quick and shifty back who also possessed the strength to run through opposing defenders if he needed to. His elite ability to make an impact in the passing game out of the backfield also made him one of the toughest backs in the league to defend even during his prime. Now, Bell rounded out a very strong Pittsburgh Steelers offense that was led through the air by the duo of Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown. Despite having this elite talent surrounding him, Bell was capable of stealing the show time and time again. His prime officially started in the 2014 season following a strong showing in his rookie year. Bell shared the backfield with LeGarrette Blount, who was another starting caliber player. Despite this, Bell entered the season as the team's starter and held onto that spot the rest of the year. He opened the season on an elite tear, posting 100 or more yards from scrimmage in the Steelers' first 8 games. However, his best game on the ground surprisingly didn't come during that stretch. This performance came in Week 11 when the Steelers took on the Titans. Bell received a whopping 33 carries and made the most out of all of them. He finished this contest with 204 yards and a touchdown on the ground.
Reaches for the goal line. Rolled in for the touchdown.
Despite his elite rushing performance, Pittsburgh only narrowly escaped with a 3-point win, 27-24. By the time the regular season came to an end, Bell had recorded 1,361 yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground, along with pulling in 83 passes for 854 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air. This earned him the first Pro Bowl appearance of his career. He was also named to the All-Pro First Team and even finished 4th in the Offensive Player of the Year voting behind only DeMarco Murray, Aaron Rodgers, and his teammate Antonio Brown. Bell's elite work on the ground played a huge role in the Steelers making the playoffs this year. Sadly, he was unable to play in their wild card matchup against the Ravens due to a hyperextended knee. Had he been able to suit up in this one, there's definitely a chance that this game could have played out differently, but the Steelers fell by a final score of 30-17. Following his breakout season in 2014, the following year was a complete disaster for Bell. He initially faced a 4-game suspension that was cut down to 2 after he and Blount were arrested on DUI and marijuana possession charges. After serving his 2-game suspension, Bell was only able to play in 6 games before the injury bug caught up with him once again. This time, he suffered a torn MCL on an ugly hit from Vontaze Burfict that brought his season to an early end.
On this pass from Ben Roethlisberger, going out of bounds, gets rolled up on both legs, crumple underneath, and you see Bell immediately grabbing his right knee.
The 2016 season started very similarly to 2014 for Bell. He started the year once again on the league's suspended list, this time facing 3 games after violating the league's substance abuse policy. Despite getting a late start to the season, he more than made up for it. Bell had arguably the best game on the ground in Steelers history in Week 14 against the Buffalo Bills. He was a man amongst boys in this game and arguably single-handedly won this matchup for the Steelers. He finished the matchup with an insane 236 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground while pulling in 4 passes for another 62 yards. Bell's 3 touchdowns alone would have won Pittsburgh this game. However, they still came out on top by a final score of 27-20. This was a record-setting day for Bell. He set the Steelers franchise record for the most rushing yards in a game with his 236-yard effort. Despite spending 3 games sidelined with a suspension and sitting out the final week of the year after the team had already clinched a playoff spot, Bell still picked up 1,268 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground, along with pulling in 75 passes for 616 yards and another 2 scores. He also continued his run of dominance into the early part of the playoffs. In the wildcard round, Pittsburgh matched up against the Dolphins. Miami was yet another team this year that had no answer for Bell, and he went off for 167 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Steelers comfortably won this opening round matchup by a final score of 30-12. In the divisional round, they took on a very talented Kansas City Chiefs team. This was a game that went down to the wire. The Chiefs were able to keep Bell out of the end zone. He still finished with 170 yards, and Pittsburgh came out on top 18-16 though. However, in the AFC Championship game, they finally met their match in the New England Patriots. Pats kept Bell in check, only allowing him to pick up 20 yards before leaving with a groin injury before halftime. The Steelers were dominated on both sides of the ball in this one and fell by a final score of 36-17. final season of Bell's prime came in 2017, where he played all but one game, sitting out the final regular season matchup of the year against the Cleveland Browns. He had one of the best years of his entire career during this campaign, his strongest showing coming in week number 4 against the Ravens. In this matchup, Bell was able to pick up 144 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground in a dominant 26-9 win.
Give it to Bell. Bell is in. Touchdown Steelers. Roethlisberger hands it to Bell. Sticks the helmet down and slithers in for the touchdown.
He was an absolute workhorse back this season. By the time the regular season came to an end, he had racked up a league-leading 321 carries for 1,291 yards and 9 touchdowns. This earned him his final spot in the Pro Bowl and on the All-Pro first team. In the playoffs, the Steelers found themselves on the wrong side of a shootout against the Jaguars. Bell had a well-rounded game, picking up 67 yards and a touchdown on the ground, along with pulling in 9 passes for 88 yards and a score. However, all that work from him was still not enough, and the Steelers were narrowly beaten 45-42. In the offseason, Bell and the Steelers were in heated contract negotiation. He spent the previous season on the franchise tag and made it clear he would not play if he was tagged again. After turning down a 5-year, $70 million deal, he did just that and sat out the entirety of the season. Bell was never really the same back again after he returned. The heavy workload and injuries he went through as a member of the Steelers, along with joining the Jets and failing to reclaim his top running back status in the league, spelled the beginning of Bell's decline. Now we're going to take a look at the prime of Maurice Jones-Drew. Now it took a while for Jones-Drew to break through as the starting running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars, as the team already featured Fred Taylor. But after outplaying Taylor during the 2008 season, Jones-Drew finally earned his shot as the team's starting running back heading into the 2009 season.
To Maurice Jones-Drew, and he pushes his way to the end zone. Touchdown, Jaguars!
He was a running back that would have dominated in any era. His running style is comparable to those players like Saquon Barkley and even Barry Sanders. Extremely well-rounded back who did not really have any weaknesses in their game. In only his first season as a starter, Jones-Drew was already being recognized as the most versatile back that the league had to offer. By the time the regular season came to an end, he had torched the league for 1,391 yards and 15 touchdowns on the ground, while picking up an additional 374 yards and a touchdown as a pass catcher. All those efforts earned him the first Pro Bowl appearance of his career. In the 2010 season, Jones-Drew made a decision that likely had dire impacts to his career later down the line. He suffered a torn meniscus in his left knee early into training camp. However, after waiting as long as he did to earn that starting spot for the Jags, paired with the success that he saw the previous year, he was not just going to give up that spot. Shockingly, he went on to play 14 games that season and only sat out the final 2 games of the year. While you would expect that this injury would cause him to take a huge hit statistically, this was actually far from the case. Despite missing 2 more games and playing on a torn meniscus, Jones-Drew had somewhat similar numbers to his 2009 campaign, his rushing touchdowns being the only area of his game that took a major hit that year. He finished the regular season with 1,324 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground, along with 317 yards and 2 touchdowns on only 34 receptions. Jones-Drew made a return to the Pro Bowl in what is one of the craziest, least known about seasons in recent NFL history. The final year of his prime came the following year in 2011. This was by far the strongest showing from Jones-Drew in his entire time in the league. He was a one-man machine on offense and was doing everything in his power to keep the Jaguars' heads above water. His best game of the year and arguably his entire career came in Week 14 when the Jags took on the Bucs. Jones-Drew proved exactly why he was looked at as the most versatile player at his position, finishing the contest with 85 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground, along with 51 yards and 2 additional touchdowns on 6 catches. He finished the game with 24 points all on his own, setting the record for most points scored by a single player in the 2011 season. Jones-Drew could have hypothetically won this game all by himself with his 24 points, as the Jags came out on top by a final score of 41-14. This level of dominance in every aspect of the game defined his 2011 campaign. He finished the regular season with 1,606 yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground on 343 carries, leading the league in both carries and rushing yards. Along with this, he picked up an additional 374 yards and 3 touchdowns on 43 receptions. This earned him a spot in the Pro Bowl along with an All-Pro first team nod. In the 2012 season, Jones-Drew suffered a broken foot that he once again attempted to return early from. However, unlike his meniscus injury, this was an injury that he could not simply power through, and he was sidelined after playing in just 6 games. This injury spelled the beginning of his decline and more or less the end of Jones-Drew's career. This toughness that defined him as a player was ultimately his downfall in the long run. Had he taken the meniscus injury or the broken foot a bit more seriously, there's definitely a chance that his prime could have lasted a bit longer, but on the flip side of things, he might have never gotten that starting spot back, so 2 sides to every story. Ultimately, the short length of Jones-Drew's prime, paired with the fact that he was playing for a struggling Jaguars team, is the ultimate reason why his prime was underappreciated. Rounding out our list today, we have Todd Gurley. He was the 10th overall pick in the 2015 NFL Draft, selected by the St. Louis Rams.
With the 10th pick in the 2015 NFL Draft, the St. Louis Rams select Todd Gurley, running back, Georgia.
In his prime, Gurley possessed a rare combination of power, speed, agility, and quickness that allowed him to completely dominate the league in only his rookie year. He sat out the first 2 weeks of the season, but made his NFL debut in week number 3 against the Steelers. This was a bit of a letdown debut, with Gurley struggling for just 9 yards on 6 carries while making only 1 catch for 5 yards. However, he quickly bounced back and became one of the most promising young backs that the league had to offer at the time.
They give it to Gurley, running left, trying to get to the corner, turns the corner, it's a 5, dive into the pylon, he's in. Touchdown, Todd Gurley.
He had racked up 566 yards in his first 4 starts, which was the most in league history since the AFL-NFL merger. By the time the regular season came to an end, Gurley had proven himself as not only the best rookie in the league, but also one of the top talents at the running back position already. He finished the regular season with 1,106 yards and 10 touchdowns on the ground, which earned him the Offensive Rookie of the Year award, a Pro Bowl nomination, and a spot on the All-Pro second team. After a very impressive rookie year, Gurley took a massive step back in the 2016 season. Many were beginning to believe that this was a one-season wonder incident, and he was well on his way to becoming a bust. He failed to rush for over 100 yards in a single game that year, and in 5 of his 16 starts, he was held to under 50 yards. Gurley averaged a measly 3.2 yards per carry that year, and this is one that he would more than likely wish people forgot about. This more or less killed all the momentum that he had going for him after an elite rookie season, and he would have to once again prove himself as that elite level talent. With his back against the wall heading into the 2017 season, Gurley completely showed out and proved the haters wrong. The hiring of head coach Sean McVay completely revolutionized this Rams offense and likely saved Gurley's career. While his season got off to a slow start, only able to pick up 40 yards on the ground in game number 1, he was able to find the end zone. In week number 4 against the Cowboys, he proved why he was much more than a one-dimensional back, and he could also contribute in the passing game.
Fake to Austin. Goff fires. Catch me. It's Todd Gurley is in for a Rams touchdown.
He finished the contest with 121 yards on the ground and 94 yards and a touchdown as a pass catcher. While these 215 yards from scrimmage are great, they pale in comparison to what he had in store for his final regular season appearance. In week 16 against the Titans, Gurley once again controlled every facet of the offense. On the ground, he torched the Titans for 118 yards. However, he had an even stronger showing as a pass catcher, pulling in another 10 passes for 158 yards and 2 touchdowns. By the time the regular season was over, he was once again considered as one of the top talents at the running back position. He recorded 1,305 yards and led the league with 13 rushing touchdowns. Along with this, he put up 788 yards and 6 touchdowns on 64 catches. He earned himself a spot in the Pro Bowl, the All-Pro first team, won the Offensive Player of the Year, and even finished in second place for MVP, just behind Tom Brady. It was very clear at this point that the new offensive scheme completely unlocked Gurley's potential. Along with this, the Rams made their first postseason appearance of his career. However, this was a very short-lived playoff run as they were defeated in the first round by the Falcons by a final score of 26-13. Gurley had a solid game in this one, picking up 101 yards on the ground on just 14 carries. Sadly, the 2018 season marked the final year of Gurley's prime. While he took a slight step back in terms of rushing yards, he was a beast around the goal line.
4th and goal from the 1, and they give it to Gurley, and he could have run 20 yards.
Once again leading the league in rushing touchdowns, this time with 17.
Gurley, straight ahead, to the goal line, touchdown!
He made a return to the Pro Bowl and the All-Pro first team, and the Rams were one of the most hyped-up teams in the entire league. They lived up to this hype as well, taking down the Dallas Cowboys in the divisional round of the playoffs 30-22.
Gurley, lot of room, inside the 20, he is gone, touchdown!
Before narrowly defeating the Saints 26-23 in the NFC Championship game. Over this stretch, Gurley accumulated 125 yards and a pair of touchdowns on the ground. In the Super Bowl, they faced off against the New England Patriots. This game wound up being a defensive battle, with Gurley not being able to get anything going on the ground, being held to just 35 yards. The Rams fell just short of glory in this one, losing by a final score of 13-3. Surprisingly, the decline of Gurley began just 1 year after he led the league in rushing touchdowns and played a huge role in his team making it to the Super Bowl. Despite still getting a consistent workload, he just couldn't perform efficiently at all and do anything with his carries. This came as a huge result of his past knee injuries catching up to him, I believe. Back when he went to college at Georgia, Gurley suffered a torn ACL. In 2018, he suffered a sprained knee, and then in 2019, he was diagnosed with arthritis in his left knee at just the age of 25. He did still end up with 14 total touchdowns in 2019 though, but after that year with the Rams, he spent a season with the Atlanta Falcons before remaining unsigned at just 26 years old. Whose running back prime do you guys miss the most? Also, let me know if you'd like me to make a wide receiver, quarterback, or tight end video similar to this one in the comments below.